we hear the words teacher shortage a lot. We don't actually have a teacher shortage. So when I was on the teacher initiative table with Superintendent Hoffmeister, we actually were trying to address the issue of not having enough teachers in the classroom. And so we sent out a survey to every single educator who had left the field in Oklahoma. There are over 30,000 people that have a certificate in the state of Oklahoma that will not come back to the classroom. And the number one reason is because of lack of respect. And we know that respect is a big blanket word. It could be everything from pay to workload to classroom size, everything that they have mentioned. But we have to be really honest right now. Educators are living in a statewide hostile work environment. We are not going to retain and sustain this profession if we continue to have our educators, our teachers, our school districts constantly under attack from people that are working up at the Hodge building and outside as well. When we have continual, people that are pushing legislation to minimize the great work that teachers are doing, whether they're coming from the Heritage Foundation or they're coming from ALEC or they're coming from Turning Point USA, educators are under attack in this state. And we have to make sure that if we want to get those 30,000 back, we have to make investments, and we're going to have to start holding some people accountable for the actions that they are directly responsible for.
My next question is directed at Representative Waldron. We're seeing a lot of quote unquote progressive, anti-woke, whatever that means, right? Rhetoric around not only the state, but around the country now, but especially in our state. A lot of this is rooted in disinformation. I've been hearing things, signs such as signs that say safe spaces are even being targeted, as if that's some sort of, has some sort of hidden meaning. Who knows? How does one regular Oklahoman, a student, or even someone working within schools take a stand against this narrative that, trying to be inclusive is somehow, quote unquote, woke?
Thank you for that question, Delnos. As a social studies teacher, I always kept a sticker on my window marking my classroom as a safe space. And I think what we need to consider here is that your most fundamental right is your ability to define yourself and who you are and who you wish to be. As a public school teacher, I always believed it was my job to facilitate a space where you could do that, choose for yourself, most basic right. We need to flip the script here because they seem to be saying that they have a right to define you, and that if you don't fit their narrative, if you decide you want to talk about pronouns or be called by a different name, if you want to choose how you're going to be and they don't like that, well, then that's wrong. And the state should not be in the position of telling you how to be or who to be. So let's flip that narrative, because the so-called conservatives who say they want limited government seem to be the same people who are saying that you have to conform to their 1950s worldview. So let's stop that.
I'm going to start with Thomas. So you're a bit different than everybody else on this panel. You're a student, current high school student. And so recently you spoke at the Oklahoma State Board of Education meeting, and you got a lot of attention for that online, and everybody I spoke to knew who you were because of it. And so I would like to know what inspired you to become involved in the issue and speak out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, and thank you for inviting me to be here. We all know that today's political climate is very hectic. It's very partisan. The other side attacks each other no matter what. And so not only have we seen this just in everyday life, but we've seen it when it comes to education. And specifically, I believe that my community as a Hispanic student has been put into light, not for a positive reason, but for a scapegoat and to be attacked. And so that's one of the number one reasons that I think it's important that students like me and students across Oklahoma speak out, is because, first of all, marginalized communities are being attacked as some sort of scapegoat to throw away the real issue at hand, which is actual education. We've also seen students across Oklahoma leave to achieve better education somewhere else. And if we want a state that continues to prosper, we're going to have to keep our kids here. And in addition to that, the way we do that is by not attacking communities like mine, but focusing on the issues at hand and holding our leaders accountable.
Amazing, thank you. And just to follow up on that, you were a part of forming a committee made up of high school students in Oklahoma called OHSCER, and I would like to hear more about that. I'm very grateful to have been involved with some of the planning on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the OHSCER is the Oklahoma High School Committee for Education Reform. And so it's a bipartisan group of Oklahoma high school students that want to fight for education reform, and that can be through multiple ways. We focus on specifically holding our leaders accountable and make sure that they are caring for us, denouncing negative policies that we think are catastrophic to our education system. And not only that, but advocating for actual solutions that can be implemented in the classroom. Because after all, we are the ones that are experiencing what is occurring in education. And so I think we should also have a say when it comes to the solutions that we see fit.
All right, the next question I have, I'm tossing over to Senator Mann, so get ready. So as a newly elected senator, you've already highlighted education as your top priority. And so I'd love to hear more about why this area of policy was so crucial for you to start with.
So I'll start by saying that why not an educator myself? I do come from a line of educators. I had 3 aunts that were teachers. My mother was a teacher for 38 years. My wife's an educator. I worked at the Department of Education for 5 years and served on the Oklahoma City School Board for 7 years. So I've had a lot of background exposure and involvement in education. I've not been a classroom teacher, but I think the reason it has become an issue for me over the last 15 years is that education, quality of education, drives everything we do. You want to build a strong economy, you want to grow high-paying jobs, education, K-12 and college. You look at health outcomes, they're all tied back to education. When we look at, and this is a horrible fact, but private prisons look at 3rd grade reading test scores to determine how many beds they're going to need 15 years down the road. So everything we do goes back to providing a quality public education so that everyone has access to learn. I also think that public schools in particular provide an experience of diversity. I think you get to know, hopefully, every student gets to know people who don't look like them, who don't have their experiences. And while someone that doesn't have my experience, I may not be able to fully understand, I can certainly have a much greater understanding. So I think public education really helps grow our students socially and mentally. And then finally, and I think in the time we're in, it's important, there has been no democratic society that's not had a quality public education system. And having quality schools is important to a free democratic society. If you look at countries that have dictators, what's the first thing they do if they overthrow? They take over the school system. And so it's important in literally every aspect of what we need to do as a society. It all starts there.
So my next question is for Senator Boren. So what steps should Oklahoma take to support student mental health during these times?
Well, thank you for that question. I think first, Oklahoma, not just in government, but just as all of us, we should first become learners about what healthy mental health is. There's a whole area of psychology called positive psychology. They studied dysfunctional psychology, and that was the whole focus of the study of psychology. But then recently, people started saying, well, what does healthy look like? What is healthy mental health? What does successful mental health look like? And so there's so much out there to learn and to know what healthy is. Because I think in Oklahoma, we have a lot of people that have experienced trauma. They haven't dealt with that. We have some of the highest numbers of poverty, have some of the highest numbers of domestic violence. We have a lot of veterans that live in Oklahoma. So all of those elements together mean that we have a lot of people that probably need an awareness that, like, they're just not going to learn it automatically from their environment, that you have to proactively go learn what strong mental health is. So there's lots of books, clubs, YouTube videos, there's tons of stuff out there.
but we have to be proactive of teaching ourselves about what that is. And the second thing is we have to live it out. A lot of what our students need are grown-ups and adults. They need teachers and family members who are living mental health strong lives. And teachers understanding what I had a series of 4 learning live streams, what was called Care for Caregivers. And it was through the pandemic, and it was to help teachers and others that were in a caregiving role what they needed in order to not burn out. And so teachers and educators are some of the most malfunctioning humans because they're overextending themselves and they're past burnout, and they're told in the organization to suck it up. If you don't like the job, go get another one. Somebody would like to have your job if you don't want it. This is what we expect. These are duties as other assigned duties. And then we reward teachers that don't have good work-life balance. And then when you try to set a boundary with your principal or whoever, they are often punished for that or disregarded or not included in leadership. So I think the next big thing is that if we know that there's a healthy way to do things, then insist that you live that way. Practice what you preach. And then secondly, connect students and those around you to resources. I think in Oklahoma, it's 211 is the number that we can call for social. It's like a social worker number you can call, and then just hook you up with all kinds of stuff: food, clothes, extra, electricity. And then we have 988 is another mental health number that is somebody's on the other line that can just help you kind of work things down, calm things down. But when I was a school counselor, and what schools really need to do is get good at referring students and families to mental health providers in their community. And then we need to support those resources with funding. Right now, the mental health department at the state level is going through a horrendous crisis. A lot of our community providers are being shut down because the money at the state has gone awry, and the funds aren't there. Funds have been lost. And so providers and therapists have been let go, or the programs have stopped. So I think at that point, once we've done all of knowing what is healthy, living it out, connecting people to resources, then we need to make sure that the funding is there, and to stop the chaos of bad leadership that we have in our state that causes this real chaotic system of not knowing where the money's going to come from next month, and then it trickles down. That chaos trickles down. The money, the trickle down economics doesn't work, but trickle down trauma does. And you see that every day when you're dealing with mental health issues in Oklahoma.